They told you that what you saw was the final cut, that the horror was deliberate, calculated, composed. But what if that was a lie? Across decades of horror cinema, there have been screenings early, private, controlled, where something went terribly wrong. People didn't just flinch, they screamed, they fled. Some wept uncontrollably, and when the lights came back on, the studios had a decision to make: release the film as it was, or quietly erase the parts that shook people too deeply. You've probably watched some of these movies, thinking you saw them whole. But what if the most disturbing scenes, the ones that blurred the line between performance and possession, were locked away? Hidden edits, whispered reel swaps, directors silenced, editors told to fix it without anyone ever knowing what exactly had been broken. These aren't stories of censorship in the public eye. These are stories of backroom edits, made not for rating boards, but out of pure fear of how real the horror felt, of what audiences saw that perhaps they weren't meant to. So tonight, we reopen the vaults. We revisit the titles that were quietly redacted, reshaped by terror not on screen but in the seats. Let's dive right into the darkness. 1. The Keep, 1983. There's a version of The Keep that runs over 3 hours. No one has seen it. Some say no one ever will. Michael Mann's surreal World War II horror fantasy was plagued by production disasters, studio interference, and legal disputes. But insiders claim that the original cut, screened only once to a Paramount exec group, featured extended dream sequences, ritualistic chanting, and a non-linear descent into Lovecraftian nightmare. Reportedly, the feedback was swift. Too long, too strange, too dangerous. Feels like being hypnotized, and not in a good way. The studio ordered massive cuts. Over 90 minutes of footage vanished. Visual effects went unfinished. Entire character arcs disappeared. The version that exists today is a skeletal shadow. Rumors persist that the full cut is housed in a salt mine archive used by Paramount. Others believe it was intentionally destroyed due to rights issues and internal fear. In the decades since, fans have searched for the original. Mann refuses to discuss it. But one thing remains certain: The Keep was never allowed to be what it was. And the real horror may still be buried, spooling silently in a vault no one dares unlock. 2. In the Mouth of Madness, 1994. John Carpenter wanted to show you madness. What he didn't expect was for it to spill into the theater. In the Mouth of Madness is a film about the unraveling of reality, where fiction bleeds into the waking world. But a deleted sequence shown only once at a studio screening pushed that concept too far. The scene allegedly showed Sam Neill's character entering a movie theater, sitting among screaming audience members, watching himself screaming in the same seat. The loop continued, each layer more distorted, the audience faces turning to look directly at the real-life viewers in the test screening. Paramount reportedly received complaints from those in attendance, claiming the film caused disorientation, headaches, and panic attacks. Whether true or not, the sequence was removed the next day. Carpenter was asked about it in a 2002 interview. His response: "I filmed something I don't quite remember. I don't want to see it again." Was it just meta-horror gone too far? Or did madness briefly become reality? 3. The House with Laughing Windows, 1976. Most audiences never even heard of this Italian psychological horror. But those who saw its pre-festival cut in Ferrara in 1975 never forgot it. The House with Laughing Windows is already a haunting descent into madness and art-fueled murder. But according to local reports, its original ending played differently. Much differently. In the unreleased version, after the climactic confrontation, the camera lingers not on the killer, but on the mural. Slowly, the painted windows begin to weep real blood. Then, without explanation, the protagonist removes his shirt, revealing the same laughing window design carved into his back. The screening audience gasped. Some stood. One reviewer reportedly left the theater muttering, "This wasn't a horror movie, it was a trap." Director Pupi Avati never confirmed the cut existed, but an Italian archival technician once hinted that Reel 7 Amperes was flagged for destruction, citing concerns from censors about subliminal messaging. A few still believe it's hidden in a locked wing of the Cineteca di Bologna. Was the film simply too strange for its time, or did it accidentally capture something meant to remain in paint? 4. Event Horizon, 1997. There are reels missing, and no one, not even the studio, knows where they went. Event Horizon was already terrifying. but its original cut was something else entirely. One early version screened to a select group included an extended hell sequence that lasted nearly 2 full minutes longer than the theatrical cut. Screams, dismemberment, flesh rituals filmed with sickening precision. But what really disturbed viewers were the human eyes looking directly at the camera, silently mouthing prayers. The reaction? Pure rejection. Studio heads called it spiritually harmful. Paramount demanded it be cut immediately. The editing team tried to restore the footage for a later release, but the film was lost in transit, supposedly damaged beyond repair. Director Paul W.S. Anderson later said, "We tried to bring it back, but I think some things don't want to be found." Some fans still believe the lost cut exists, kept in a vault or stolen during shipment. Others think the footage itself was cursed. Either way, it begs the question, what did that scene show that made the studio want it erased from reality? 5. Possession, 1981. Few films feel as dangerous as Possession, but once, it was even worse. Andrzej Żuławski's feverish tale of paranoia and body horror featured a performance from Isabelle Adjani that still whispered about. But the U.S. test screening included a scene since lost. Anna, covered in blood, confronting a mirror that talks back with her own voice. The reflection smiles. She doesn't. According to an assistant editor, the reel was cut because the audience froze. Some laughed nervously. Others were visibly shaken. One man vomited. The discomfort wasn't due to violence, it was something else. That wasn't acting, that was rupture. The scene was never included in any release. Żuławski refused to acknowledge it publicly, but a French journalist once claimed to have seen the footage at a private festival cut, describing it as, "The closest cinema has come to demonic possession on screen." Was it art, or something that slipped through the veil? Event Horizon, E.T. Jojo 7. 6. The Ninth Configuration, 1980. The film already felt like a descent into the crumbling psyche of soldiers, priests, and killers, but in its first cut, The Ninth Configuration nearly took the audience with it. William Peter Blatty's follow-up to The Exorcist is a surreal, spiritual horror rooted in madness, but the original version screened once for a closed group reportedly included a brutal, unbroken scene of suicide. Not stylized, not symbolic, just a man in uniform walking calmly into a lake with weights in his hands. Test viewers didn't react with shock. They sat in stunned silence. One viewer later wrote, "It was like watching someone give up on screen, in real time, and no one stopped it." The studio demanded the scene be pulled. Not trimmed, buried, no mention was made in the commentary. No alternate cut includes it. But in production notes archived by Warner Brothers, one page is redacted with only a handwritten scrawl. Too quiet, too much. Was it horror? Or did The Ninth Configuration expose a reality too heavy for fiction? 7. The Believers, 1987. There's a reason this film still feels wrong, even in its edited form. The Believers follows a grieving man who uncovers a cult hiding in plain sight. Voodoo, sacrifice, and systemic horror all converge, but in its original screening, one scene made the panic too real. Reports describe a sequence where a child is made to watch a ritual involving animal sacrifice, filmed with shocking realism. The child doesn't scream he watches, he learns. The camera never looks away, neither could the test audience. Until one woman reportedly yelled, "Turn it off," and bolted for the exit. The studio panicked. Animal rights groups were alerted. The footage, they claimed, was simulated, but insiders say it wasn't, and that the raw footage was immediately pulled from circulation and sealed under legal hold. A second cut was distributed, softer, more metaphorical, but the scars remained. In interviews, actor Martin Sheen once hesitated when asked about the scene. "They cut what they had to," he said, "but the air in that room never left me." Was it artistic realism, or had the Believers accidentally recorded indoctrination? 8. Audrey Rose, 1977. A girl's scream echoed into the parking lot. People outside thought it was part of the movie. It wasn't. Audrey Rose explores reincarnation, grief, and the terrifying possibility that a child might be someone else's lost daughter. But early viewers at a New York preview screening were shown a version with a prolonged hypnosis scene, in which the child regresses not just into memories but into the moment of her past death. According to notes from the screening, the child actress reportedly convulsed in real time, her voice dropping into a low growl, repeating the phrase, "He won't let me out. He won't let me out." The scene went on for over 3 minutes. unbroken. Audience members began to murmur. Some stood. One woman fainted. The atmosphere turned icy. The studio, shaken, removed the entire segment. Even in director Robert Wise's commentary, it's never acknowledged. And yet, in an obscure French horror magazine, a still frame exists. The child's face mid-scream, eyes rolled back, surrounded by light not used anywhere else in the final cut. Was the possession merely performance, or did the film tap into something it never meant to channel? 9. The Brood, 1979. David Cronenberg never shied away from discomfort, but The Brood tested even his own limits and left one particular scene to rot in the darkroom. The film, centered around psychoplasmic therapy and rage-birthed children, was already grotesque in concept. But early test audiences in Toronto were exposed to an uncut version that reportedly featured an extended childbirth sequence. No music, no cuts, just the mother's primal scream as she licked blood from the creature's face. The audience response was immediate. Some turned away. Others sat motionless, unable to look but unable to leave. A production assistant later claimed that one woman muttered, "It felt wrong. Not fake, not like a movie." Within days, the studio demanded the sequence be shortened. The final cut retained flashes, hints of what happened, but lost the lingering dread of a birth too organic to stage. Rumors persist that the original footage was kept by Cronenberg himself, never delivered to the studio archive. One horror journalist once asked him directly. Cronenberg only smiled and said, "Some things don't belong on film. Doesn't mean they weren't captured." Did the scene cross a line, or did it simply show us how monstrous trauma can become when given form? 10. The Other, 1972. They say evil has a face. In The Other, it might have had two. Directed by Robert Mulligan and adapted from Tom Tryon's chilling novel, The Other tells the story of twin boys and the terrible secret they share. But test audiences in Los Angeles were shown a cut that didn't just suggest the twist, it confirmed it too viscerally. One now missing scene reportedly featured the surviving twin performing a burial ritual alone, whispering both sides of a conversation. His face shifts, voice changes, and according to those who saw it, he breaks into silent, unblinking laughter after the final shovelful of dirt. It was too much, too direct. The ambiguity that made the film so haunting was shattered. Viewers were disturbed not by the content, but by how real the performance felt. A child actor channeling something that felt ancient. The studio removed the scene. It's never been restored, and Mulligan declined to discuss it in interviews. One crew member said, "That kid became someone else during that take. We don't talk about it." Was it poor taste or too perfect a moment of psychological horror? 11. The Unseen, 1980. The monster wasn't what terrified audiences, it was what it represented. The Unseen follows a trio of journalists trapped in a farmhouse with an inbred, childlike killer. The theatrical version pulls punches, but insiders say that an original cut revealed the killer's mother not as a victim, but a participant. A sequence reportedly showed her bathing and dressing her son in a child's nightgown, cooing lullabies, even feeding him from a spoon with exaggerated tenderness. Test audiences reacted with horror, not at gore, but at the psychological implication. One studio note read, "Maternal care becomes incestuous by association. Cut immediately." The scene was removed. No commentary, no deleted footage, just gone. The home release buried the controversy, and The Unseen faded into obscurity. Years later, a VHS collector claimed to have a rough cut with audio-only remnants of the scene, the mother's voice singing a fractured lullaby, "Sleep, my sweet, don't grow old." Why was it erased? Because it was too dark? Or because it suggested that horror doesn't always wear claws, it sometimes wears a smile? 12. Let's Scare Jessica to Death, 1971. No one could agree on what they saw, or rather what they thought they saw. Let's Scare Jessica to Death is a descent into whispered madness, told through the eyes of a woman unsure what's real. But early prints allegedly included a key sequence that pushed the ambiguity too far. A funeral scene where Jessica sees her own body being lowered into a grave, with mourners who all wear her face. The scene lasted over 2 minutes, filmed in one long, breathless take. The reaction? Chaos. At the test screening in upstate New York, an elderly man collapsed. One woman reportedly suffered a panic attack. Theaters demanded a safer cut, something less abstract, less uncanny. The studio complied, The funeral sequence vanished from every subsequent release, never mentioned in the director's commentary. But a lone surviving promo still, published briefly in a 1972 horror fanzine, shows Jessica in a black veil standing opposite herself. The director has neither confirmed nor denied its existence, but cast members have dropped cryptic hints. One simply said, "There was a version where the line between Jessica and the dead didn't exist. They buried it." Did the film go too deep into the mind of madness? Or did it stumble into something we weren't supposed to see? 13. The Entity, 1982. The screams didn't stop when the lights came on. They continued in the lobby, in the parking lot, even outside the theater. The Entity, based on the alleged true story of a woman tormented by an invisible force, was already controversial in premise. But its original test screening version featured a sequence too disturbing to survive. Audiences were shown a prolonged, unbroken scene in which the Entity assaults Carla in real time. No music, no cuts, no fantasy glow, just silence and breath. A woman fainted during the screening. 2 others walked out sobbing. Studio execs were shaken, not just by the scene, but by the audience's visceral rejection. They called for an immediate re-edit. The final release softened the edges, adding visual effects and dreamy lighting. But word of that scene spread. Some critics claimed it was too raw, others too exploitative. Yet buried in editing logs is a curious note. Sequence 9B, redacted, master copy not duplicated. Some believe the uncut version still exists, locked in Fox's archive under legal hold. Others say it was destroyed to prevent lawsuits. But the question remains, was that scene too horrifying? Or was it too close to what actually happened? 14. The Kindred, 1987. Test audiences didn't know what to make of it. Some left halfway through, others stayed, but covered their eyes. The monster in The Kindred wasn't the problem. It was what the monster did in a sequence that's now missing. This 1987 creature feature centers on genetic experiments gone wrong, with a squirming mass of tentacles and teeth that once had a name, Anthony. But insiders claim that a now-lost scene showed Anthony's birth in graphic, almost medical detail. Puppetry mixed with real animal tissue, filmed in a cold, sterile tone, nothing theatrical about it. The test screening report was damning. Several viewers complained of nausea. One reportedly vomited in the aisle. The studio immediately demanded a cut, and the scene disappeared. Not trimmed, erased. It was never mentioned again, not even in the home video release. What survives is a choppy gap in the narrative, a moment where the film jumps, as if forgetting what just happened. A cast member later hinted, "There was a version where Anthony came into the world, and no one wanted to see it." Did The Kindred go too far with practical effects, or was it simply showing us something too close to biological truth? 15. The Sentinel, 1977. The room fell silent when the model looked out the window and saw hell staring back. In that moment, test audiences didn't scream. They froze. The Sentinel, with its slow-burning dread and Catholic symbolism, culminates in a fever dream of imagery, malformed figures, chanting rituals, and a brownstone hiding the literal gate to hell. But what early viewers saw during Universal's first screening was something else entirely. The original cut reportedly featured extended sequences showing real patients with severe disfigurements, not prosthetics or makeup. These individuals were allegedly filmed to evoke otherworldly horror without disclosure. Audience members were horrified, not just by what they saw, but by the sense that the camera had captured something unethical. There were whispers in the lobby. Are those real people? Did they get consent? Universal panicked. Within days, reels were reassembled, close-ups were shortened, some faces disappeared. To this day, the studio denies any wrongdoing. But horror historians point to early reviews that mention visuals no longer present. And a former assistant editor once claimed that the master reel has locked segments no one is allowed to open. Was it simply too disturbing? Or did the Sentinel cross a line no fiction should ever breach? Bonus: Next of Kin, 1982. Before we wrap, here's one more horror film you need to add to your list. Next of Kin is a slow, creeping Australian thriller that builds dread like water behind a dam until it breaks. But some say the version we know today is a shell of something far more unsettling. Shot in an actual retirement home with a troubling past, the film blurs psychological breakdown with inherited trauma. But in 1981, An early screening at the Melbourne Film Festival allegedly featured a cut with a full minute of found footage, inserts brief, flickering black and white images spliced into dream sequences. These flashes included what looked like real patients wandering halls, one mouthing words silently to the camera. Another showed the film's lead actress sitting in costume but off script, whispering, "He's not acting, he never was." None of these fragments appear in the final cut. Director Tony Williams has never acknowledged this version, but the cinematographer once mentioned in an obscure interview that some reels were misplaced during post-production and "we didn't fight to recover them." Rumors still swirl. Was it a creative experiment or something captured unintentionally during production? Some even speculate that the inserts weren't planned, that they appeared during development, on film not present on set. The footage is lost. Or perhaps it was never there. Either way, Next of Kin remains a film where silence is never safe, and the most haunting scenes may be the ones we almost saw. If stories like these unsettle you, it's because they should. Cinema is full of what we're allowed to see, but it's the scenes we were never meant to witness that linger the longest in rumors, in vaults, and maybe in memories that aren't even ours. If you enjoy peeling back the sealed layers of horror, consider staying with us. There's always another reel they don't want you to find. And tell us, which of these redacted scenes do you think was removed for our safety? And which ones were buried because they revealed too much?